Hello guys, today I am gonna tell you three stories, and it's this show is gonna be very spooky. So the first story is a guest. So let's jump into the story. A young man, a young man and his wife were on a trip to visit his mother. Usually they arrived in time for supper. They had gotten a late start, and now it was getting dark. They decided to look for a place to stay overnight and go on in the morning. Just off the road, they saw a small house in the woods. Maybe they rent rooms, the wife said. So they stopped to ask. An elderly man and woman came to the door. They didn't rent rooms, they said, but they would be glad to have them stay overnight as their guests. They had plenty of rooms and they would enjoy the company. The old woman made coffee, brought out some cake, and the four of them talked for a while. Then the young couple were taken to the room. They explained that they wanted to pay for this, but the old man said he would not accept any money. The young couple got up early the next morning before their hosts had awakened. On a table near the front door, they left an envelope with some money in it for the room. Then they went on the next town. They stopped at a restaurant and had breakfast. When they told the owner where they had stayed, he was shocked. That can't be, he said. That house burned to the ground 10 years ago. The old man and woman who lived there died in fire. The young couple could not believe it, so they went back to the house. Only now there was no house. They were shocked. All they found was a burned out shell. They stood staring at the ruins, trying to understand what had happened. Then the woman started screaming in the rubble. There was a badly burned table, and on the table was the envelope they had left there that morning. I think it has a little bit of suspense in it. So now let's jump into the another story. Yes, the another story is the name of a church, the church. So let's get into that. There was a fellow named Lemley who wasn't afraid of any living thing in the world, but he was scared of pretty much anything that was dead. The only reason he didn't whistle as he passed a graveyard at night was that he never went past a graveyard at night. He always stayed. Let's read it again. The only reason he didn't whistle as he passed a graveyard at night, that he never went past a graveyard at night. He thought that he can pass the graveyard, but the moment he passed through it, he get very terrified to death. He always stayed well away from places like that, even if took him miles out of his way. People who knew him used to tell stories about the time Lemley got lost up to the Devil's Fork. It was a dark and stormy night, and he was cycling home on his bike. It was pitch black, and the rain was just starting to come down. There was a big flash of lightning, and Lemley caught a glimpse of the old hardened place. Again, I'm gonna read it. There was a big flash of lightning, and Lemley caught a glimpse of the old hardened place. It was just an old cabin that had been deserted for as long as anyone could remember. They said a woman had been murdered there years ago, and there were rumors that it was haunted. Lemley started cycling for all he was worth and tore off down the road. The next place he came to was an old let's forget it. He came to was an old church. The front door was hanging off its hinges, and the windows were all broken. By this time, the rain was coming down in sheets. The thunder was rumbling, and the lightning was streaking across the sky, so Lemley knew he had to find shelter somewhere. He thought the church should be pretty safe. After all, it was the house of God, and it still had a good roof on it. Lemley left his bicycle under a tree and stumbled into the old church. It was very dark inside, but he felt his way down the aisle and sat down in the pews. It was nice and dry and warm inside, and he began to feel better. But pretty soon there came another big flash of lightning, and Lemley saw something that chilled him to the bone. He wasn't alone in the old church. Not by a long shot. It looked like there were people sitting all over the place. He wasn't alone in the old church. Not by a long shot. It looked like there were people sitting all over the place. They were dressed all in white and just sitting there with their heads bowed. It slowly dawned on Lemley that the church was dawned means झुकना, उसकी तरफ झुक पड़े, was filled with dead people, all wearing the white funeral shrouds they had been buried in. For a moment he just sat there in the darkness, rooted to the spot. He was frozen by fear. Then he let out a terrified screech and took off running down the ashes. Just as he came to the front door, Lemley ran smack into one of the ghosts. He fell down, and the ghost went. All of a sudden, there came another flash of lightning, and Lemley saw that they were not ghosts at all. They were sheep. So let's begin another story. This is gonna be the third story. It's called The Halloween Mask. There was a boy named Lenny who really loved Halloween. It was his favorite holiday, and he always tried to celebrate it in a style. Every year he would save up his money and buy the best masks, the best costume, the best decorations. This year was no different. Lenny was getting ready to go to a Halloween party at his friend's house. He got dressed up in a shaggy black coat, big black boots, and a long flowing cap. Then he put on his Halloween mask and admired himself in the mirror. It was the scariest, most hideous mask he had ever seen. He was sure that everyone at the party would be terrified when they set eyes on it. He would be the envy of all his friends. When Lenny turned up at his friend's house, the party was already in full swing. He could hear the dull sound of music coming from behind the door. He rang the doorbell, and his friend answered it. She greeted him and hugged him. He looked around the living room. Some people were dancing, and others were talking, laughing, drinking, and nibbling at the buffet. There were witches, ghosts, skeletons, vampires, zombies. None of the masks were very scary. Lenny was sure he had the best one. He stood there and waited for someone to comment on his mask, but nobody paid any attention to him. He was disappointed, wandering around the room. He tried to give everyone a good view of the mask. He wanted them to be scared. He wanted to cause a stir. One girl tapped him on the shoulder and started talking to him. "Hey, who are you supposed to be?" she asked. Lenny tried to reply, but he found he couldn't move his mouth. The mask felt too tight. He was embarrassed, so he turned away and went into the kitchen to get himself a glass of Halloween punch. He tried to pull off his mask so he could take a drink, but it wouldn't budge. It seemed to be stuck fast to his face. He pulled and tugged on it, but no matter what he did, he couldn't get it off. Lenny was starting to get worried. It was hot inside the house, and Lenny could feel himself sweating under the mask. He needed to get it off. He needed to get it off now. Grabbing a knife from the kitchen drawer, he went into the toilet and locked the door behind him. He looked in the mirror and started scratching and tearing off the mask. But it really hurt. It was as if the mask was firmly stuck to his skin. Getting desperate, he took the knife and sliced into the mask, cutting off little strips and rubber and tossing them into the sink. Gradually, a queue formed outside the toilet, and people started getting impatient, knocking on the door and calling out what's going on in there. Lenny was in panic, and he tried peeling off the rest of the mask, but it stubbornly stayed in place. He couldn't understand what was wrong. What if it won't come off? He wondered, what if it stick on my face forever? He began hacking at the mask with the knife and ripping off little bits. More and more people were banging on the door. "Come on," they shouted. "What are you doing in there?" From inside the toilet they heard Lenny shrieking. "It won't come off, my mask, it won't come off." The people gathered outside the toilet gave each other worried looks. One of the girls was puzzled. "Mask?" she said. "But he wasn't wearing a mask."